I guess I have a simple question as we start this edition of Mountaineer Report here. Are you having fun? Are you having fun, the viewers and listeners of this show? And are you having fun, my co host, Ethan Bock, as we are going to discuss, as you guessed it, Neal Brown's comments from his Monday press conference in which he told the fans, are you having fun? Why are you not having fun? Sounds like a lot of fun tailgating and the atmosphere for big games, even though the team once again did not show up, did not perform, and did not win a big game and a big game at home. So, on this episode of Mountaineer Report here, brought to you by WV Sports Now, make sure to like, subscribe, also hit us up everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, etc. We're going to try to make some sense of what Neal Brown said. I already gave my takes on what I think maybe he should have said and how he should have handled it, and I do think I caught him off guard because, if you don't realize, I was the one who asked him that question, and I didn't mean to bait him into this mess, but he's there nonetheless. So as we get to unpack what Neal Brown said, maybe talk the rest of the press conference, not that it seemed to matter now, and go into that Kansas State game, another ranked opponent in Morgantown under the lights, national TV for the Mountaineers, another opportunity. And if they win this game, they are back in the Big 12 race, which is what probably he should have said when I asked him the question on Monday. So to start things off, Ethan, where are you on the meter of having fun watching WVU football? Where are you? 1 to 10. Your fun
I think we're all in the same boat. I think we're I think at best we're at a 2 or a 3. I mean, you can't in year 6 you can't say something like that, even if you were caught off guard and you were trying to say something else. But to say those words to a fan base who's already irritated that they can't ever get a signature win under you. With this type of fan base, you absolutely cannot say that. And I don't think Neal Brown said a single bad thing PR-wise for his 6 seasons that he's been here. That's one of his better qualities. But yesterday, just after losing to Iowa State, just the way they did, and you say probably the worst thing you could have said to a fan base after that loss, you definitely lost your climb trusters that were still with you still to this day. You lost them.
Yeah, it does seem like he did lose even more people. And the sad thing is, Ethan, I asked him really about the Kansas State game, but of course about why should fans support the team the rest of the season? Why should fans go to a big game, big atmosphere, all of that? But the attendance for the Coal Rush game was under 60K. I thought it would have at least been at 60K. It was under. They announced it at 55, and that's what they announced it as. We don't really know. Usually what they announce is higher than the actual number, and that's everywhere in the country. I know you were there with some friends. Maybe you had some fun tailgating. But this comment, honestly, it was almost the only thing he could have said that would single-handedly hurt the numbers for the K-State game. There are going to be people who are going to go no matter what. They're going to have a minimum bar because it is a major program in a state. There really, let's be honest, is not that much else to do on a Saturday night in Morgantown. You go to a bar, they're going to have the game on. You might as well go. Certainly if you're a student and you're not shelling out tons of money for those tickets. Of course, people driving all over the state, hours sometimes. That's a whole different story. But the way he said that, if I'm a student getting a ticket for free, now I may not go. Yep. I think he actually might have lost people. And I would be curious to see what the attendance is going to be on Saturday night. Again, another big game, another must-win game, but a game that they are in the race if they do win. Obviously, they're not the favorite, but Vegas actually thinks they have a better chance if you look at the sports books, even coming off the Iowa State performance. But I wonder if that direct comment, if there were people thinking, okay, I'm going to go, give it one more week of a chance, another big game, before they hit the road. But now I'm not. Because now I think that comment's the only thing he could have said that may make the fan base actually want to send a message nationally and have no one in the student section or show up with paper bags on their face and have that on ESPN. That stuff probably wouldn't have happened if he didn't say what he said. And he's going to try to walk it back. I do know he's going on several university-sponsored shows. Of course, it's going to be talked about on his radio show this week, which will be after we're recording this. and I'll ask this, is there anything he can say to smooth this or walk this back? Again, as I said, even in my kind of commentary, what he said was really, really bad. But I do think I caught him off guard. I do, honestly. And I do think he meandered around a comment that wouldn't garner a backlash, that maybe we wouldn't be doing a show on. I don't think McAfee would be talking about. I don't think would be a national viral story that everybody was discussing. The other comment was just, we've only lost to 3 undefeated ranked teams, which is true. Not many programs in the country have played 3 of those to this point. We're right in the Big 12 race. I'm frustrated. I know you're frustrated. I want to win. You want to win. All of that. That's kind of what the second part was. It wouldn't make anybody trust if they weren't trusting. People would roll their eyes. He's been saying it for years, especially this year. But I don't think it'd be the backlash that the overall comment was. But that first part, can he walk that back at all before Saturday?
I don't think so. I think he can try to, and he probably will. And he'll probably give, honestly, a pretty good answer back.
Yeah, because now he's going to have days to think about it. And he actually normally is good at pressers and interviews. He really normally is good in those situations.
99.9% of the times he's great with answering questions. He's not. He one day could be an athletic director or a politician. He's just really good at talking. So, but I don't think he can win the fan base back in this situation. I mean, even if they beat K-State,
I was going to ask, like, they can't win them back before the game, but what if they win?
Even if they win, I don't think he can win them back unless they win out. And even then, I don't think it's crazy enough. Even if they win out and contend for the Big 12 title, I think people are just done with this. Just can never take that next step. And after K-State, there really isn't a game on the schedule that's like a game they shouldn't like absolutely not win. Like there's no Penn State or
I mean
Oklahoma on
just
there.
At Arizona maybe.
But like there's no team on that schedule where they're really outmatched talent wise,
right?
So he could get that signature win. So that's the problem. That's
the problem though. If they contend for the Big 12 title, they get in the Big 12 championship game. They say this is even possible with how wacky it's been, Ethan. They could lose to Kansas State and then win the rest of those games, or even lose to Kansas State and Arizona and then win the rest of those games with how much everybody's getting tripped around the country. If they lose the next 2, then they're 2 and 3 in conference play. It's really, really bad. But then you have 4 or 5 games at the end of the year that they're going to be the favorite in. They're going to have more talent in. They're going to have better recruiting ranks against all of those teams. Now, I don't think they're going to win them all in that scenario. I'm sure the players would no longer be bought in. Some of them would be sitting out, all of that, because they wouldn't mentally be there. You'd have the situation of 2 years ago probably unravel. But we also have seen Neal Brown's teams win 3-4 in a row at the end of years. If that happens, they could still kind of crawl in there and end up with 8 wins, or even be in the race at the end of the season, or even some wacky year crawl in the Big 12 title game. But if they do that and they lose to Kansas State, the program and the fans would be in the same boat, even if you have a conference title and you somehow win that Big 12 title game, because it would be a wacky year, and the team you're playing probably wouldn't be normally a top dog. The Oklahoma States, Utahs, they're not that good this year. So you would end this year with another 8-9 win season. It'd be like the Duke's Mayo Bowl year. You maybe would be in the playoff because you somehow win the Big 12. As insane as that is, they would hang banners. It'd be the 16th conference title. They would start talking about how that's top 20 rank and all that BS. And yet the fans would say, but where's the signature win?
Yep.
You get turkey basted right away in that playoff game. There'd be no chance in that thing. And where's the signature win? And there wouldn't be one if you lose this Kansas State game. So I think that point is perfect, that even if they win 5 or 6 in a row and somehow are in Dallas, this is the last opportunity to win a big game this year based on the rankings. I mean, Arizona, I think they're an overrated team. We'll see. They're going to be at home. But 3-17 against ranked teams, this is the next one, and there might not be another one.
The only way he can get that signature win over a team that's just out talented West Virginia is that Big 12 title game or that first round in the playoff, whoever they would play. So by saying that comment, it would be totally different if Neal Brown said this year one. It's a clear rebuild year. like everybody knows they're not going to win many games, but it's just to build culture. That's the only way I could maybe understand this quote.
Yeah,
You
you're one or
cannot
two.
say that
Yeah.
coaching a Power 4 team.
The quote came off as, and he's been with WVU now for 6 years. And this is what people a lot of times say, that maybe he's just a quintessential. We've talked about this. Maybe he's just a group of 5 coach, that he's had a ranked win when he was at LSU, or he was at Troy beating LSU. Now it wasn't Joe Burrow's LSU. I think that needs to be said. They were 25th. They weren't 3. But there was a ranked win at Troy, and that talent differential is way big. And if you look at it, Ethan, he should have had a couple. They had a series there. They won one, and they were in the other one. I mean, he basically was like LSU's kryptonite for like 2 or 3 years during that bizarre group of 5 series they had with Troy. And he clearly could rally a team to play way above their talent to face a perennial top program when he was a group of 5 coach. But by saying that comment, it almost comes across as a guy who had group of 5 success and is then here at an historic program, saying with the drone show and all that, it's almost like he's the deer in headlights, like, wow, this is Big 12 football. This is Power 4. There's a drone show. There's all of this. Like, wow. And just is taken aback by this is the show. And I'm here. I've arrived. And like, just appreciate this if you're a fan. When the fans are mostly going to say, no, we've seen greater days, and I'm not going to drive 3 hours to have a natty light. Like, that doesn't get it done outside of a car. That's just, I think everything together makes that so bad, because not only is it year 6, not only has there not been a big statement win, not only can you pick apart the schedule even when they won 9 a season ago, and this was kind of a prove-it year, with this being a veteran team where last year Green was less experienced, they were not as experienced. Looks like Green's regressing, so that can go on him as what quarterback have you really developed. The other ones are transfers that whether they worked out or not, and mostly not, during your career as a head coach. But also, and this is part of why some of the West Virginia people, I think, are annoyed with the connection to Pittsburgh media, and a lot of people are Steeler fans. Morgantown WVU is in the northern half of West Virginia, Northern Point. It's an hour away from Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. It's not in the center of the state where maybe it should have been 200 years ago. So because of that, people that are way down south or in the center, they're driving 3 hours. They're driving farther than me, and I live in Pittsburgh, to go to those games. So you're dealing with 80% of your fan base is very inconvenienced to attend and spend money on you. And you're talking about just having some fun, knowing, and it's not like and we've said this too, they didn't just lose. I put this in the piece today. If they would have competed well and lost to Penn State and Iowa State, who has Rocco back, maybe he's an NFL quarterback, all of that, even though they're not an historic program, and then beat Pitt because they had a lead at the end and hung on there, I think the vibe would be a little different. Some fans would still be mad because Pitt is not Penn State, and then Pitt wouldn't be ranked probably. But I think the vibe would be a little hair different, that you could at least sell the losses are close and they're great programs, and we did win the rivalry game that you care about. But to blow the game against Pitt, not even show up in the Penn State-Iowa State game, and then say that.
I think West Virginia fans just feel like they're in purgatory. You can beat the teams you're able to out talent, but when it comes to playing a blue blood like a Penn State, Oklahoma, you're most of the time losing that, if not barely competing in that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the problem with that's. I think that's the reason why we think Neal Brown can't win the fan base back over the rest of the year, because the fan base is just stuck in. They're beating bad teams, but then once they play good to elite teams, they barely compete half the time.
And how would he prove us otherwise? Because last year, he proved doubters wrong. They're supposed to win 4 games. They won 9 in a bowl. TCU was the national runner-up. They ended up being an average program. They weren't nearly what they were a year ago. Pitt had probably the worst quarterback play they've had in 30 years, who pretty much handed the game to West Virginia, even though West Virginia didn't have much on offense and Green got hurt. But that's a brawl win, and that's what Brown will say. And then you win the bowl game against a power program in North Carolina, even though they're historic in basketball, but not really football. But Drake May, the NFL draft pick, who's now starting in the NFL, didn't play. If he would have played, then that could be the signature win. But by him not playing, Yeah, West Virginia had control the whole way through, but would they have won if Drake May was there? It's a question mark. North Carolina was not a national championship contender with Drake May, so maybe they still would have won. But North Carolina fans can bring that up. That can be brought up nationally. West Virginia fans who are done with Brown can bring that up. There are things to pick at. And then prior to that, 2022 was one of the worst seasons in 20 years, really since before Rich Rodriguez got things started his first year when they won 3. He could blame COVID. He's talked about the energy vampires, and he's really saying that Dana Holgerson players were malcontent and they were a cancer in the locker room, and they didn't have the transfer portal rules to get rid of them. They had to stick around. Hubbard's even talked about that they were problems around. There were some excuses then, but I think what the fans were willing to do, the most optimistic fans were willing to do, is okay, you took advantage of an easy schedule in 2023. You proved the doubters wrong. You gave a middle finger to ESPN. You beat a legit program in a bowl game. You lifted a trophy. If you can do that the next year and take a step, we are willing to forgive COVID and the energy vampires and move on. But then this year's been this year.
I mean, it's not like Neal has guys in the NFL that he's recruited. It's not like he's on year 3 or 4 and he's still trying to transition from the Dana players. It's year 6. He has
this is his team.
This is his team. He can't have that excuse anymore. And I think that's another thing the fan base is annoyed with is just the excuses throughout the years. And it's now we're in 2024 and it's like, yeah, they have 3 losses to only undefeated teams. That's not terrible. It's not they're 3-3 doesn't look that bad. But after
like USC's 3-3, there are powerhouse blue bloods that are 3-3 and they have worse losses.
But this program's had too many excuses the last 5-6 years now. So that's where that's coming from.
And again, USC lost in overtime to Penn State. West Virginia was never in the game. Never in the game. That's a difference. Like that matters. Yes, a coach will tell you a win is a win, a loss is a loss. It does not matter. But when you're a fan or us trying to analyze this as media, it does. That's the whole point of doing a show or going on social media is to contextualize and analyze what happened. So they weren't in the game, and they were more in the game against Iowa State, who's obviously not to the level of Penn State. They were more in the game. And what I even said, I think is true. And the only positive, Ethan, I want to hear your thoughts on this. The only positive of what came out of the Neal Brown press conference, and I don't think this was intentional at all. I do think I caught him off guard. He said the worst thing he possibly could say. It made no sense. He kind of meandered until he actually got to his schedule thing that he normally talks about. The whole thing sucked. However, he did turn the fans away. If you noticed, Saturday and Sunday, a lot of the really, really long time, and I'm talking about long time to when he was a freshman, Garrett Green stands, they were starting to turn and say, maybe I was wrong. He's never going to be more than what he was last year. He didn't progress. Everyone knows who I'm talking about and who made people know. The Garrett Green guys that said, oh, if he was a starter years ago, this team would have been better years ago. That group turned on Green on Saturday into Sunday. They were off the Green wagon. A lot of them wanted Nico now. By what Brown did on Monday, no one's talking about Garrett Green. Garrett Green has been totally let off the hook now. So if you're Garrett Green, you might be sitting back saying, thanks, I just got a break. And he has to play well because you could argue he single-handedly lost that Iowa State game. They had other issues. No one player loses games by themselves. Brown didn't call his best game either. But 2 picks at the end when they were right in that game, and they can say there should have been pass interference all day. I still think it was a bad decision. The second one was a really bad decision, even with PI that Brown's admitted was really, really bad. They were in the game even then. And you can't allow – it was 14 points off turnovers. They scored both of them. Green really lost that game. But he's been let off the hook by what Brown said.
Yeah, Green was let off the hook, and when Neal was asked about Garrett and Nico, he gave a great answer. He kept both of them should be happy about it. Nico should be prepared for an opportunity this season towards the end of the year, possibly. But at the same time, It seems like they're already committing to Nico being their quarterback next year if everything stays in place. So I thought Neal had a good answer for that.
Kinda. I was a little bit surprised that he said that we hope he would be the starter. That door's open a little bit. It almost came across like he's saying that's the plan, but he's not gonna, like, if Rocco Beck would call and accept probably some call that maybe they're making him, they would take a guy.
Yeah.
So he left like a crack, it seemed like. But yeah, I don't think.
But you can't. It's so hard. I feel for the coaches in media now because it's so hard to be able to say that in October when you still have a whole entire. Actually now you have 2 transfer portal cycles.
Yeah.
So
and you're in the race now. You got 2 transfer portal cycles. You got a bowl game that you probably are going to get to play in, even if not the playoff.
So much could change.
Rules could change, for crying out loud.
Change, yeah.
Every time anyone in national media tweets, I'm like, oh, like because you just know that there's going to be some rule or some new opinion or something is going to go catastrophic different. I mean, the president of the university right now is trying to totally change the whole structure of college football with a whole different group that's totally separate. It seems like what West Virginia and Ren Baker are trying to do. Yeah, but he gave an answer there that did appease both. If you're Nico or Green in either one of their camp, you can't really be against that answer. That's what he had to say. That was a very political, diplomatic answer to appease both. And it appeared, and this is why I believe this, it appeared like he was ready for that question. Brown comes in pressers because, including myself, he pretty much at this point, he knows everybody in media there. There are some that, fluctuate in and out, but in his tenure, it's been at least now 3 or 4 years, it's been the same guys. And there were some in the beginning that are no longer around because of COVID and lots of jobs. But it's the same core, certainly, of who asks questions. He knew that was coming. He knew that question was coming, especially because he got it. And I even said, actually, that you can make an argument that it may be because somebody also said, well, I can't believe you were the guy who didn't ask it on Saturday because somebody else asked it. And I said, well, I think that was more of a Monday question. I think that was more of a Monday question because he needed some time to think about it. And he did, and he gave a great answer. But he did not seem prepared for the other question about how do you sell the fans and come out of these games. He totally seemed caught off guard. We're never going to know unless he admits one way or the other. I actually, if I was advising him, maybe that's what he should do. Maybe he should go on Caridi or whatever and say, actually, I was caught off guard. This is what I should have said. I don't know. I don't know how you walk it back.
That's usually a layup question or a layup answer for him.
It's easy.
Usually the fan base questions are he has to know he knows what to say.
Yeah.
But it seemed like
all day. Gave him credit for the Kansas comeback.
Yeah. But it seemed like this time around he was caught off guard and just kind of blurted out what his brain was thinking, and it wasn't the right thing.
It seemed like he just kind of foot in his mouth, just blurted out whatever his brain was thinking. And it almost seemed like maybe he was talking to try to get his brain, like warm up his brain to think about what he normally thinks of. I mean, it came across in the climate we're in like a politician who got caught with a question that doesn't really work with whatever their platform is in a debate, and they're just trying to meander around to double talk and not really answer. People always talk all the time about, oh, I'm mad at these both politicians or both sides because no one's really answering anything. It seemed like he was trying to get to his answer, which is kind of his like clutch comments about schedule and all of that, and then just couldn't get there. It seemed like he wasn't ready for it. But as you mentioned at the top, normally he's more collected than some politicians out there and is ready to go with pretty much any question you could give him. And I do think part of his downfall maybe is he's a little bit too honest. He's really honest. Like Mike Tomlin, he's basically having a comedy show. SNL could do a skit off his press conferences every week, and I think he's honestly happy when he confuses everybody. If you just look at his press conferences, we're recording this on Tuesday, you get the media, national and local, and the fans reacting to what he said about the quarterback situation, and nobody has any idea. Everyone's opinion is all over the place. No one literally doesn't know what he said because it's so off the wall. Brown doesn't do that. Brown will tell it like it is, but the fans are then able to say, well, you just admitted being wrong here. You admitted being wrong there. You admitted that you're wrong twice. You said you weren't ready for this game. It's a really big game. Why weren't you ready? It's easier for the fans to criticize him then.
Yeah, 100%.
And then you make again. It's really almost like it really was a horrendous way to put it. It was. I mean, there was fun to be had for sure, but yeah, how fun is losing, and how fun is going into a game when you know you don't really have a chance. I mean, what's the tailgating vibe going to be for that Kansas State game? Those fans are not going to think they have a chance. I went to some of those tailgates because it was a night game before going in the press box. The fans thought they were going to win that game. They thought they were confident in winning that, and they knew Iowa State was undefeated. They knew they just sucked to Penn State. They knew they blew the Pitt game, but the fans, maybe they were brainwashed or whatever it is, but there was a lot of optimism there.
I mean,
I don't know if that's still going to be. And I predicted, and I thought they were going to win the game too. I honestly thought they'd show up.
I did as well. Because if you were there with the atmosphere, with the coal miners, the black uniforms, the night game, it was an 11th ranked team.
Yeah.
They score with Jaheim White.
The first TD gave you the vibe like they're going to do this. That wasn't hard to get down the field.
They really it almost seemed like they were just resuming from what they just did at Oklahoma State last week.
Yeah.
And then they have another drive where it should have been really 14-0. Should have been 10-0 for sure.
At least, yeah, you got to get that field.
Yeah. And then once Hayes, and I'm not blaming Michael Hayes for the loss, but once he missed the field goal, it seemed like the momentum got shot, and it was like, all right, here we go. Like, and that's exactly what happened.
It felt like that a little bit, but then the weirdest thing is Iowa State was still not performing either. They weren't putting points on the board either. They had their blunders too. So I agree. It felt like when Hayes missed that kick, here we go again. And then the offense puttered, and they didn't score again until the final minutes of the game. But in the middle there, Iowa State was also puttering around, and they were very much – West Virginia was not down by any more than 4 points the whole way through until Green threw the first pick. And then he threw the second pick, and it felt like the second pick he was pressing. And even if there was pass interference, because that's what Brown's talking about all day, if there's pass interference there – I think that's the issue that's going to be this tenure. And there's already a clip out there on social media, obviously. It's a lot of excuses. And even if, and I said this too, even if some of the excuses are legitimate, when there's so many and there's very few positive moments, and you have a program that has not had a 6-year stretch this bad in multiple different eras of the system since the 70s, which is well beyond before either of our times. And then you're saying what you said, that just compounds to just be a load of crap to the fans, because I agree, and we talked about it. I do think that, especially when Narduzzi complained about the refs in the brawl, that calling that touchdown that was called back on Hudson Clement, it might have also happened to Pitt, but if that happened to Penn State or USC or Ohio State, the refs wouldn't have called that. I don't think that's just my opinion. There's no factual that's something it's not like they conspired, but that was a very close judgment call with an NFL player in Wyatt Milam and a touchdown on the board. And you could argue whether that mattered to that score or not as well. And it's possible that Wyatt Milam's just way better than everybody else. And that's why he's hard to officiate. He's become hard to officiate. It's almost like Shaq playing against players in the NBA. He's bigger and he's hard to officiate. So I don't think that would have been called back against Ohio State and some of those programs, but it was called against West Virginia. And then you could argue that should have been pass interference, even if on Green's first pick. And if that's called PI, then West Virginia maybe has momentum. You could argue the holding call in the end zone there when they looked like they were finally going to stop them, because even with the picks, they were right in the game, and it looked like they were going to stop them. They get momentum back. But then once that was called, it's like, oh, there's no way they're going to go 4 more downs. They're going to clearly let them score here. They're just exhausted now. But it was called. And you could argue, we talked about it. You could argue COVID. You could argue the transfer portal rules hurt them in the beginning of the tenure. You could argue Dana left the cupboard bare, which West Virginia fans who are pro Neal Brown argued about for 3 years and screamed about. But we are now 6 years in. We are not 3 years in anymore. This is a different situation now. And to say what he said there, it does appear that it went from after the Dukes Mayo Bowl, he had maybe 75% of the fan base trusting in the climb. It then went to maybe only 50% after the Penn State game. It might have went below 50 after you blow the backyard brawl. Now we're maybe at 5-10% of trust, if not 0 after those comments.
5 to 10 at most. I mean, I don't know how. I've seen even after his comment yesterday on social media, like the people that have trusted the climb for 6 years. I've seen posts where they're like, even they are done. Like Neal lost his biggest.
It felt like a personal insult because some of those people are either flying from other parts of the state or driving hours on end to go to these games, spending thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Thousands, and some of those people that we see, I know they're not big Ken Kendrick, but they are donors. They're in the VIP club. I mean, that felt like a hit to them. Yeah.
They're going to games to watch wins. This is their pro team.
In a lot of respects, yeah. 100%. In a lot of respects, I mean, people have pro teams they also support, but especially people from West Virginia, a lot of them are either fans of Pittsburgh, maybe fans of Cincinnati teams, or fans just all over the freaking map. The one team that says West Virginia on their chest is having the head coach tell them, just have some fun outside. Doesn't matter whether we win or lose. That's how it comes across.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is how bad that was, and that's how that came across. I don't think he realizes while he was saying it how it came across. And I almost wanted to jump up there and stop him from saying it because it's like this is wild. Like it appeared like he couldn't help himself and couldn't stop himself. It was just continuous word vomit, just word vomit after word vomit, and then eventually got to kind of a reasonable answer that no one is going to remember. And as much as it does suck, and I do think it's kind of a little bit misrepresenting what he said, with people creating memes and cutting off half the quote, he set himself up for it. You didn't need to say anything at all in the beginning. Like none of that needed to be said at all. And I know for sure that what he said when they listened to it back surprised people within the program. Like it was a bizarre chain of events. And I had multiple texts come to me saying that is going to be the clip that is played for 20 years when he is fired. Because that just embodied, and as you put it, he's almost a national champion when it comes to PR press conferences and interviews on talk shows. And that isn't that there. So now he's losing off the field when he was at least collecting wins there. He's losing on the field. He's losing off the field. Where are the wins? And as Pat McAfee put it today, and I've said, and other people have said it, if they had a top 25, Ethan, that was full of big market teams in Los Angeles and Miami and those places, in Dallas, and also just tons of blue bloods, I could say, okay, maybe West Virginia cannot compete in this era. It's not that. It is a top 25. A lot of the blue bloods are not good. Look at Oklahoma. Look at USC. They're very average. There are some that are coming back, Miami, for an example, but it's not all blue bloods at all. It's not all major programs or big markets. Freaking Ames, Iowa. Iowa State is there as a legit college football playoff team. BYU is there as a legit college football playoff team. Pitt, and we can argue about whether they should claim this or claim that through their history. They have not started 6-0, including the Kenny Pickett year, including the early 90s, since 1982. Iowa State has not been 6-0 since 1938. That's before a lot of the success of the West Virginia program. That 1938 is, we're talking a century plus, basically a century ago. We're almost at a century there, almost 200 years. It's not like it's just riddled with big markets and blue bloods. When you look at the top 25, West Virginia should be able to compete based on that landscape. And there's more money now than there was 2 years ago. The NAL situation is not Bama, Ohio State, but it's not bad. It's not there. There's worse programs. I know for a fact, and I'm sure you do too. There are programs who are literally doing worse in NIL that are better on the field than West Virginia.
100%.
That makes no sense.
Yep.
Makes no sense.
But this is why NIL, in a sense, has brought parity.
It's almost evened it out, but it doesn't help West Virginia still.
Yeah.
And it should, at least, you would figure if any program was going to get bumped up from this, it could maybe be West Virginia if they would have handled everything right, but it's actually not really helped the program out that much, even though you have a media mogul who's collecting more engagement than anybody in the world in media, in Pat McAfee, who's donating, and he's donated more than just the $1 million he put out there, by the way, publicly. He's donated again since then. And Yeah, maybe that's more in the future. It's not going to help this team, but you know, another thing you can point to is if they start out strong and then when the other team makes adjustments, a lot of the players said, well, once they started making adjustments and twitching around, we didn't really have an answer then. And just to paraphrase what they said there, they kind of were alluding to that. That's then coaching. That's then like, okay, I did the NIL. I got the roster together. I went in the portal. We're in a close game. We did well. They adjusted because they're a quality coaching staff. We're now in the halftime. We're in the locker room. We got to adjust again. We can't just sit around and just go back out there. And that's what it looks like they did because except for the Kansas game, it looks like they finished worse in these big games too. I mean, Penn State, they came out there flat and they weren't in the game anyway, but they let Penn State score the end of the first half and we get the picture. And yeah, just what he said was just so bad. It ended up being a situation where we're doing a whole show, people are doing whole shows, and it's the whole conversation of the damn Monday. I was sitting there, Ethan, it's 3.5 hours long. We're there. And we're talking about 5 minutes of that thing. That's how bad what he said was.
And you would think, like, yeah, people are pissed still about losing to Iowa State, not getting the job done over a top 15 team to where you could actually really position yourself to play in Dallas. Crazy enough.
If they would have beat Iowa State, yeah.
Yeah, you could even lose to K-State and you would still be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
People really aren't even talking about it as much as you would think because of this quote. Now, both of them combined, the loss and what Neal said on Monday, terrible. Yeah. Absolutely terrible. Yeah. So, and then it doesn't help when you have Cignetti at Indiana starting out really well, and you have Matt Campbell, who's now gotten Iowa State, who's never been a historically good football team.
No, I think it's very universally believed, even Iowa State fans would say, that Iowa State football was worse than West Virginia football, historically speaking. And we're not talking basketball. Certainly Indiana is. And they are a combined 12-0 and very much in the thick of things.
You could even throw BYU in there. Nobody expected BYU to start out a top 15 team, and after what they did last year in their first year in the Big 12. BYU and Iowa State have had seasons in the early 2020s, crazy to say. They've both had good seasons around that pandemic era, and they had to rebuild in the last year or two. And now they're back to top 15, 10 teams.
I think that's also the kicker, and Indiana is the perfect example with Cignetti. It's been proven, whether it be a blue blood or whether it be a basketball school that's trying to get something going football-wise like Indiana, you can do it and flip a 180 in 1 year. You can. If you do it right in the portal, if you have everybody on board, if you are a really good coach and a salesman, you can. Cignetti had a group of 5 resume like Neal Brown when he got this job. Everybody said the Indiana job is a trash job. People even said nationally that he should not take it and either stay at JMU or sit out the year because he would guaranteedly get a future job and it would be better than that one. I thought it was a weird job to take because you're bound to, at best, be like 10th in the Big Ten with how much they're expanding now. It is a very, very hard job. And yet right now, they're looking like in a better situation than West Virginia. And that's a legit conference. You can't say that's ACC and maybe Pitt's taking advantage of an easy schedule. Indiana's playing the freaking Big Ten. And they may not end the year strong. Maybe they tank it at the end of the year. It's hard to believe Indiana can contend football-wise in the Big Ten. But the vibes are good right now. And as we're speaking on October 15th, and they're not good right now for the West Virginia Mountaineers and that fan base as we're speaking either. So, and Cignetti walked in the door with a lot of players that he did not recruit, changed that roster a little bit, but it's still sprinkled in with, I'm sure, some energy vampires there. And they're 6-0. I mean, there are certain coaches that can overcome. And I also do believe there's a possibility that Neal Brown is not a bad coach. Like people think he's the worst coach in the country, or he's not that bad, but he's not great. He's not elite. And he's clearly not somebody that can elevate more than he's given. It doesn't appear. I mean, that's maybe you could argue last year, but that's what we're working
to prove it, though. He's had chances to prove it.
Yeah, that's what it looks like right now. That he can be an average to good coach at best. There's a ceiling there, and I do not believe there is a ceiling. Some people believe this for the program in this era that the Dukes Mayo Bowl is the ceiling for the program. I do not believe it. Maybe I'll be wrong in 10 years. I do not believe it. There's enough history there. There's enough money there. There's enough of the fan base there. There's enough of engagement there. There's enough of social media there. They normally do actually do okay attendance wise, even when they lose. There's enough of everything freaking there. And McAfee again went through it all again on his show. At the end, we just go through it all. Every time they talk West Virginia, there's enough that says, and they're not in the Big Ten. If they were in the Big Ten or SEC, I would agree. They're in the Big 12. Oklahoma and Texas are gone. There is a path. They are the winningest program in this current Big 12. And the past does not necessarily mean the future, but they should be. If Iowa State can contend, if Kansas State can contend, they should be able to contend. Texas Tech looks better than them right now. Cincinnati could argue being better than them right now. Cincinnati, come on. I mean, TCU got in the playoff a couple years ago. They don't look great now, but there's money near Dallas, but that money's probably going to go to SMU because they're not on the death penalty anymore. They're not, the media market wise, SMU and TCU's fighting SMU to get the same media coverage. They're not locked in. West Virginia can argue the same thing with Pittsburgh media and all that. And yet they got in the playoff a couple years ago. Like, it can be done. It can be done, but just West Virginia has not been able to do it. And the one common denominator from the players, from the fans, from the media, to COVID, to the portal, to NAL, the one common denominator, even Shane Lyons, the Ren Baker, is Neal Brown. He's been there the whole time from 2019 to now. So he is now, that if that's, and I don't ever want to intentionally get somebody fired, but if he was not on the hot seat before, I feel like he got to be on now, because Ren is not a knee-jerk guy. He's not going to do what social media wants him to do. But he there's no way he could have loved that comment. There's just no way. I mean,
Ren had to have been like, "What the hell?"
Yeah,
like,
and
there's
he's another
no
great
way.
politician that could say, "Well, he had to have been."
He's no dummy. Like, he knows how to speak too. Like.
Right.
Neal Brown just had a brain fart, and that's what it came down to. But it doesn't matter. He said the worst possible thing he could have ever said after that type of loss. And he may have been perfect PR guy for 5.5 seasons, but what he said on Monday was he lost any fan base that still was trusting the climb.
Yeah, Mountaineer Report here, Ethan Bock, Mike Asti, and we just basically ranted about what Neal Brown said here for 20, 30 minutes here. Didn't even really get to plug anything or get to anything really with Kansas State. As we wrap up the show, though, we'll probably do a preview show before the K-State game, but just in case we don't, and I don't put that together, what does West Virginia need to do to beat Kansas State? Because if they get that win, I don't think anyone's going to forget about what Neal Brown said. Now, he can't walk that back no matter how much he'll try. That's going to be a clip that will be played if and probably when he is eventually fired. But this is just a fact. The Big 12 is so wide open. Everybody is beating everybody up and cannibalizing each other. And maybe they'll even lose you mentioned it before the show. Maybe they won't even get the bye because the Group of 5 team will be ranked better, but they'll get an automatic bid no matter where it is. If they're 3-1 in the conference, they are very much in the race, and the schedule is certainly easier at the end of the season. This would then be a ranked win. People can pick apart the ones from the past years. This would be a ranked win that people thought was a preseason favorite. You could not pick that apart. And if he can galvanize the team after how down the vibes are right now, that might actually show something about how much the team does still believe in him, even if the fans don't. Can he, and what does he have to do to beat K-State?
If he's able to rattle off only one loss the rest of the season, that's really impressive. And I still don't think the majority of the fan base would get behind him if he was able to do that and they were able to get to Dallas.
Yeah.
But I think in this game, I said it last week, they had to establish the run and hold on to it like they did it against Oklahoma State. And what did they do? They mixed up pass and run early on, and it worked. And then for some reason, they kind of went away from it, and Jaheim White kind of disappeared. CJ disappeared, and they went to pass, it seemed like, a lot in the second half. So I don't know why they went away from it. I understand Iowa State's defense is really good, but at the same time, this is how your team, your program has been identified for the
By
last
you.
4 or 5 years.
You identified this way. If you're Neal Brown,
Yes.
like he said this, that this is how he even said every year, like, I realize this is what we got to do, but then he just doesn't do it.
They put up video game numbers against Oklahoma State on the
Yeah.
rushing end. And for some reason against Iowa State, they just went away from it after running a lot. So establish the run for all 4 quarters against K-State. I don't care if they're playing the 85 Bears or a elite defensive team.
That'd be a rough game.
Yeah. But that is their style. That is how they've been able to. That's how they were able last year to win 9 games. They had 3 running options who went over 800 yards and were able to average pretty good numbers per attempt.
You got to dance with the girl that brung you. Like, if you walk in the dance, you got a 7 on your arm maybe, and you see a 9 or 10 out there, and I'm not going to dance with you. I'm just going to try to dance with all these girls, and then you're going to strike out left and right. Then you don't even have the 7 anymore. Like, you just got to realize who you are, dance with the girl that brung you, and then move on. And obviously, and Brown says this too, if you're down 20 points, then yeah, you got to throw, but you don't make that decision early in the game. And I do think another part of this, which again, Neal Brown inadvertently got Garrett Green off the hook. Garrett Green has not only regressed, but which I'm trying to get Neal Brown to answer this. This is the question I have not been able to get him to really give me a good answer on. If you've heard any of the press, I've asked it every damn one for like 3 weeks now. Garrett Green's decision-making on whether to run or pass is a problem. It was not last year. It is this year. I wonder, off pure speculation, if now he's done as a senior, if his mind is not, I have to prove myself as a passer to make it in the pros. So he's trying to shy away from what he does best, and it's hurting the team. That would be the only defense of Neal Brown, because I don't believe Brown telling him, hey, you can't run. He says you're able to run. He does do it sometimes. We've seen that. But there were moments in the Iowa State game where there was an open lane and Green's trying to throw. Like that. That's not
last year. Garrett Green would have not even hesitated.
And Neal Brown has said, and the fans say like that, if that's the recipe at West Virginia, are you doing what's best for the team right now, or are you doing what's best for you? I mean, that's almost the question that people are wondering. It probably needs to be asked too of Green. Like, it's hard to believe he would just get this much worse. And it does look like a little bit of the Jared Deggy offense that you mentioned a couple shows back, but I know it's not exactly. And it's really hard to believe that if there's an open lane and no defender there for 10 yards, that Neal Brown is telling him not to run it. That's hard to buy. I mean, there are fans who believe that, but if that's not the case, and I don't think it is, then Green is making that decision. And Chad Scott says it's all Green making those decisions. Last year, he would have ran 100%. And he's trying to throw more this year. And maybe he got into these are young kids. We talk about it every day for 7 months. Maybe it got in his head, I got to show more passing. I got to be at this completion percentage. I got to be here. And he's not anywhere near any of those spots. And it looks like it's getting into his mind that is actually causing mistakes and making him a worse player. And going into this year, he's trying to be smarter. He's not. He was smarter last year on the field, and that included blowing a game against Houston because of his lack of smarts necessarily. But none of that's being talked about because of what Brown said. So, do you have a pick? Are you going to go? Are you going to go out on the limb again?
I think we both had 1-1 before in this 2-game stretch. I thought they'd beat Iowa State, but just like I said earlier, this program's just been in purgatory. If you're a fan, I have a weird feeling they're going to win because it would be very Neal Brown era-esque to win this game and to be able for the next few weeks be able to pump it out that you're still in contention for the Big 12 title with an easier schedule coming up, depending on how you look at it. It would be very Neal Brown to win this game once the fan base is kind of zoned out. This is kind of what happened in 2022. They're already out of it, but they beat Oklahoma for the first time in Big 12 play. Then they go to Stillwater and win that. Or 2021 when they had to win 2 games straight to get bowl eligibility. Yeah. They do this every single year, it seems.
Yeah, and it can convince Wren to stick with it because you're ending strong. The players are trusting you. Let's see what happens next year. Let's go into recruiting and go in the portal. That's what he was able to sell a couple years ago when it was so bad. You end strong. You're in contention. I think we both know that if they're in Dallas, even if it's after a weird 2007 like 8-win, 7-win season, they're not firing them. Like they're going to look at that result, even if it means you're taking advantage of a trash schedule at the end. And you still didn't have a statement win. I mean, imagine that. We're going into year 7, and they don't have one statement win you can point to. That really is the case right now. You can say the Black Diamond Trophy was there twice. You can say the Brawl last year. You can say a couple of ranked Kansas State teams years ago. But those teams didn't end strong. They weren't really good. Virginia Tech is basically a worse program than WVU the last 5 years. And Jerkovic lost that game for Pitt. So, yeah, I mean – they're winning the uniforms. They're winning engagement on social media, maybe, and in conversation on the McAfee show, but they're not winning enough on the field. They're not winning big games, to say the very least. But I do have an odd, 24-16 is what score I'm throwing out there right now. I don't think they're going to have 40 points. I think there's going to be issues, but I think Kansas State somehow is going to get faltered there. And even though Giddens looks great, the elite running backs they've had more luck against outside of last year with Gordon and even going to this year with Gordon than otherwise. I mean, I don't know. That's not enough of a reason. And this would be the best moment for him to get a win, Ethan, off of kind of what you're saying. They win this game. Yeah, most of the fan base would still not be bought in, but then they leave home. You don't got to worry about a question about being at home. They leave home. Arizona games on 6-day selection. That thing could kick off at 10:30 or 11, man. So half of those fans might not even stay up and probably won't even watch the game. So whatever happens there, under the radar until the next morning, you're going to get a good week with people maybe just taking a break from Mountaineer football, which the program would probably love. And then you get a bye coming up after that.
Yep.
Soon. And then the schedule gets easier. But that'll do it for this little longer edition of Mountaineer Report, but we had to recap what Neal Brown freaking said. I don't know if you had fun or not, Ethan. Did you have fun here on Mountaineer Report?
More fun here.
Saturday. Yeah, more fun here than on Saturday. And yeah, in all seriousness, there was some fun. I had fun even with a press pass tailgating and not having the full on fan experience. But the fun leaves you when you watch the game, and then you just don't want to hear about, hey, win or lose, we're having some fun. Kirk Cignetti came from previous FCS to a Group of 5 to now Indiana, which no one cares about football, and I cannot imagine he would sit up there and say, yeah, well, Indiana, you don't expect to actually win titles here, do you? We're just trying to have fun at the tailgate. That would be ludicrous. Yep. And that's what it sounded like out of Brown's mouth. And this is out of the mouth of the head coach of the 15th winningest program in the history of the sport. Like, you just lost to a team that isn't even close to you, that has like a couple conference titles in 150 years. You have 15. Like, it shouldn't be like this. It is. And it was a very, very bizarre and odd and bad and ignorant comment. I don't necessarily know if he believes in his heart of hearts. I do think I caught him off guard, but I don't think he'll ever be able to walk it back. People save videos in their phone, man. Like he can say whatever he wants. Whenever he's fired, even if it's years from now, that video will surface again. I almost guarantee it.
Yep.
That is going to become a viral video, and maybe Old Takes Exposed will use it if somehow they end up winning the Big 12. But I'm not putting money down that that's going to happen. Because what are you buying into to believe that, even knowing how bad the conference is right now? So hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell for more of these here on our YouTube channel. Also find us everywhere you get your podcast for the audio version, which you don't get the facial expressions, so I recommend the video. That'll do it for this edition of Mountaineer Report. Is pretty much was a Neal Brown hour. And check in with WV Sports Now for the rest of our coverage throughout the week and beyond.